Hello, welcome everyone to these short sessions of videos called AEQ Tech Talk or Tech Chat. And the idea is here to introduce our partners and distributors and dealers all over the world, the ones that want to participate. And if you don't know me, I'm Peter Howarth. I'm in charge of special accounts in Europe. I'm taking care of Scandinavian markets. I'm also taking care of the UK and Italy. And then also I take care of our US office in North America. So today with us, we have Mr. Liam Burke. He's the commercial director of Broadcast Radio. He's our partner in the UK, a great technology company and a fantastic partner to us. So welcome, Liam. How are you doing?
Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah. So as I said, we're keeping this as short as possible, and I want to kick off immediately and have Broadcast Radio tell us what they are doing. And Liam, so please go ahead and give us a brief of what Broadcast Radio does.
Sure, no problem. Well, at heart, we're actually a software company, I guess you would say, at our core. We've been creating technology for the broadcast radio sector for nearly 25 years now. We actually started while we were at university. Myself and the technical director are still the owners and directors of the company. We were at our first playout system, which was a sort of embryo of what we do now, which back then in around 1995, 1996 time. And then when we graduated from university in 97, we decided that we were going to see if we could sell the software that we had sort of started developing to radio stations, principally in the UK back then. And we were basically looking at small community radio, small commercial radio stations, and working our way up from there. Fast forward over the ensuing 20 years, and at heart, Myriad, which is our player system, is still, I guess, our core product. But we decided probably about 15 years ago, maybe a little beyond that, that the best way for us to actually to introduce the player software to sell the player software was to actually also sell hardware systems, mixing consoles, other associated audio systems, and full studio installations. So we started really in education, I guess, doing studio installations and putting together studio packages. But we realized very early on that actually the studio packages we were doing were just as applicable for other types of radio, be that community radio, hospital radio, small-scale commercial radio. Although at the time, probably the focus we had was more on the smaller side of installation work in terms of self-contained and compact studios. Over the years, we've expanded this to cover virtually all sizes of radio installation. So today we supply commercial and community radio stations here in the UK. We're also very active in the Middle East and East Africa, around Kenya, Tanzania area. But the bulk of our installations now will be using digital consoles by AEQ user, and also coupled with Dante, of course, to allow it to connect to to interconnect between studios, interconnect between the consoles and other AEQ equipment, but also any other third-party equipment that is Dante enabled as well. So we continue to software continues to be the main product that we make, but we of course then couple this with hardware in order to provide complete solutions to our customers.
And one of the cornerstones of your integration would be the mixing consoles and
Sure. Okay. So one of the key things that's been really good for us is that we've been able to work with your team at AEQ to actually tightly integrate our software with the Capital and the Forum consoles. This has allowed us to make studio installation and integration much simpler, because we've been able to move away from having to use GPIOs and other such hardware to interface software and physical equipment, and instead we've developed an interface. We have a standard interface called the Broadcast Radio Hardware Service, which is able to talk natively to the AEQ consoles. So we're able to get core information such as fader statuses. We're able to switch faders on and off, trigger user keys, which can then in turn trigger macros inside of the AEQ console. And we're also even able to get things like the VU information streamed in real time to our software. Now, this is the reason this is important, because the hardware service then is the sort of middleware layer that then connects to all of our other software. So we're not just talking about playout here. We also have a Myriad logging, which is our audio and data logging system. So we can take hardware events such as mic live points and log those alongside the audio, so the clients who are looking at logging systems can see when the microphones are open. We also have a studio signage system called Smart Sign, and again we can use the virtual hardware outputs from AEQ via the service to indicate mic live status on the smart signs, but also as I mentioned earlier, we can also display VU information and that type of thing. And in fact, actually, all that is also surfaced within the core Myriad product itself. So your playout system is able to show you when the microphones are active, and also even display VU information for confidence within the playout system. Obviously, it's not a substitute for the VUs on the consoles, but it does allow all the information to be displayed within the playout system, which is generally the focus for the presenter, because obviously that's where all the content is being played.
As a host, you need that type of information, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So currently, then, what projects and markets are you addressing? I mean, with all this, I know that, as you say, we've become a bit of a building stone for you guys. And we can provide both equipment and, of course, facility to access that equipment or those equipment from your software. I mean, any particular projects or markets that you want to highlight that you've been able to enter?
We've been specifically working with a lot of universities that have required equipment. So the most recent one we installed just a couple of weeks ago was at Stratford upon Avon University, which again was a Myriad upgrade coupled with a Forum Lite in that instance. So that was a good installation. We've got two more just downstairs at the moment. We've got two UR7s, which are I'll send you a picture of those so you can put one of those up on screen. But UR7s are Forum Lite based studios, are sort of top of the range educational studios. Those are going to Hope University in Liverpool, which is quite a good installation. And we were also just sent a couple of consoles. I think it's actually only one console up to Glasgow City College as well, who are converting from an older system from a company based in Scotland, and they're taking out their old consoles, putting in I think that's a Capital 12 in that instance, and of course Myriad 5 as well. So by basically what we're finding is it's very easy for us to try and convince people, or people are tending to want to upgrade both their software and their consoles at the same time, because there are advantages of combining those two. Quite a lot of advantages. You can use Dante for your audio. You can have the integration between Myriad to control the consoles and vice versa. So as a package, selling or proposing digital consoles coupled with the latest Myriad 5 is a compelling upgrade path for a lot of customers.
No, definitely. And as far as I understand from what you're telling us, is that you've been able to evolve, well, obviously not only with our equipment, but you basically had to focus on evolving from being a pure software developer, a supplier, into a one-stop shop service, really.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the studio installations has been key to that. Trying to provide a full service, as you say, but there's no point just. It's also important to offer something a little unique because there are plenty of other system integrators out there. So one of the unique aspects that we're able to provide by working with AEQ is that deeper integration, that understanding of how the ecosystems work and how they can work together. And that's been really great working with you guys on that, because we have worked with other manufacturers and continue to work with other manufacturers, and not all of them give us that level of support and access to the technology to allow integration.
Glad to hear that. So in essence, we're recapping on this a little bit. You've been with us since end of 17, beginning of 2018. So not too long, but we've done quite a lot, I would say, on the UK market. So the main reason, as you say, was our openness and our capability to assist you with technical insight, or not insight, but help you with and our openness in terms of protocols and how you can control our equipment.
The value of the product is partially in its keen competitive pricing, but also in the level of functionality you get for that pricing, because there are cheaper consoles available, of course, and there are more expensive consoles. But what we find is actually because the level of functionality within the AEQ range is very high for the costs involved, really, which gives us a competitive advantage over other digital consoles, because for a lot of there's little things that make a big difference. Like, for example, it's perfectly easy to take two AEQ consoles and create some talkback between them. But to do that with some other consoles, you have to buy other equipment, and it adds to the overall cost of ownership, which is difficult sometimes. Obviously, if you want something more complex, if you want to create a more complex talkback system with multiple points, you do need to have an intercom system, a correct, proper intercom system. But it's one small example how that on a simple 2-studio installation, there really is no requirement for additional equipment to just provide some talkback between the two, and the consoles are flexible enough to allow us to do that. We also really like the macros and the user buttons, because you can then use that to create more advanced features. Like, one example is we often create a voice tracking mode, which would be a macro that will be on a user button. And when the user pushes that, it will do, sometimes it's as many as 25 macro steps each way, depending on whether it's going on or going off. And it'll do things like remove the microphones from the program bus and make them exclusively on the auxiliary or record bus, or one of the output buses that we're using for recording. Does the same thing for the playback channels, removes them from the record bus, but make sure they're on the program bus. And then we might have an edit channel that we want to have on the record bus but not on the program bus. At the same time, we would also probably be raising virtual hardwares to create some sort of indication on the smart sign to say, okay, we're now in voice track mode. And so then the system, you can then voice track without the voice being broadcast on air, or without the and continue to broadcast the main playout channels on air without it being recorded on the voice track. And then obviously when you come out of voice track mode, we then run that exact same amount of commands in reverse to put the system back into normal mode. Now that is in itself is quite a powerful feature that it would require a user to maybe do 10 or 15 button pushes to set it up that way. But by using a macro to do it, we can automate that fully, which is really useful actually, and really good. Another example would be we have a smart transfer system between software. So say you've got Studio 1 and Studio 2, the system is capable of a single button or a single press within Myriad would allow the software to transfer main playout from Studio 1 to Studio 2 along with all the associated metadata and on-air control and all that type of thing. But we can also now trigger virtual hardware events inside the consoles to actually to route stuff, or if we had like a netbox, something like that, we could also do the routing that way. So we can trigger on-air routing through that way. We did that with the Links group they had a 4-studio broadcast center that was actually running 4 or even 5 radio stations. I think one of them didn't have a studio, and we had to work out how to make it so that any of the studios could broadcast any of the services, or they could be coming from an automated system in the racks room, and that was done with a netbox 32, I think, with associated commands from Myriad that was actually triggering the routing and the different steps needed to do that. So it's another example of how we were able to work with the technology to solve the solutions for the customers.
But in essence, also you've highlighted your experience with our equipment. It's been intensive 3-4 years, and you've had a very good experience with us apparently, and we've had a fantastic experience with broadcast radio.
It took a while for us to get some traction, as always these things, but luckily we have strong links with a lot of stations, so we were able to kind of put that in. And I feel now that we've sold a lot of consoles this year, I think, and I think we'll continue to sell them in the future because there's now quite a lot of momentum, and a lot of stations are really seeing the benefits of AEQ and the equipment that's offered. So I'm pretty hopeful that things are just going to get better and better. But yeah, it's been quite a good few years, I think, with developing this partnership.
Very, very, very much so. Yes. All right. Well, I think it's been a good session, this one, and you've given us a good insight on how you use our equipment. In this case, most of the equipment that you consume are mixing consoles, but you also do codecs and you also do our net boxes and stuff like that. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
In any event, I would love to, if you have any recommendations that you would give to someone who is a total layman on AEQ and has no experience with AEQ, if there's something that you could say to recommend, not only AEQ, of course, but also the power of unity that broadcast radio represents.
Yeah. I mean, if you're considering AEQ, maybe not familiar with everything they can do, it really comes down to how easy is it going to be to use it. I think that's the key thing. And one of the things that I really love about the consoles is that a lot of the complexity is in the menu system or in the control software, and the actual control interface itself is pretty straightforward, and it's very easy to operate. So I mean, I would first and foremost, I'd say that what you need to look at is ease of use in terms of integration. How is it going to work with your playout system or whatever software you're using? How easy is it going to be for the presenters to use as well? Because for a lot of people, when you first talk about digital consoles, they'll think, inherently they're going to be more complex than the aging analog console I've had in the studio for 15 years. But the truth of the matter is actually the opposite, that the consoles don't have a lot of buttons on them. They don't have a lot of knobs for users to twist and fiddle around with. And there is user security built in as well. So you can set up your consoles, set up some snapshots so you can always roll back to a known good configuration. And then you can lock out a lot of that stuff so that you're try and cut down on those calls at 10 o'clock at night when somebody said, I don't know, I've pushed a button on the console, I'm not sure what it's done. So I think that those are really useful to look at. I think that aesthetics are important. I think the consoles look nice, particularly most of the installations we do are sunk into desks, the CS models rather than TTs. And I think that provides a very clean studio look, very uncluttered for someone sitting in front of it. So I think there's lots of real positives to consider. I think also a really big thing, which isn't just limited to AEQ, is that the Dante having the Dante interaction or compatibility is really key, because it does mean that you have that flexibility as a user to say, okay, well, there's some great stuff in the AEQ range that solves X, Y, and Z, but if there isn't something in AEQ that solves this particular issue, there will be from a different manufacturer, and it's going to work. That's the key thing. I mean, there's a lot of talk about interoperability on digital content, but the truth of the matter is the only one that really works every single time without any hassle is Dante, because it isn't a open source thing. It is obviously ordinate, I guess, control that ecosystem, but because of that, we do know that you can take an AEQ Dante enabled device and you can plug on another Dante device from another manufacturer, and they will talk to each other and it will work really well. So I think that's a very important aspect for people to consider as well, looking at the future, because you're not tied into one manufacturer. Much as we'd always encourage them to come back to AEQ or come to us, it does mean that they do have that flexibility, and I think that's key for the future.
Yeah. Good. No, seriously, it's been very good, and you've been touching on things and highlighted things that, as a manufacturer, as AEQ, we would probably take for granted because we're so focused on our own product. But you, as a good integrator and someone out in the field, so to speak,
sure.
You're looking at things that becomes very useful for you and for the end user, of course. So. I really have to thank you for that. You've given us different angles of view, I would say.
No, so that's good. No problem at all. Very welcome.
It's been a real pleasure, Liam, and really want to thank you for attending. And I hope it's been interesting for everyone. It's been very interesting for me, definitely. So
sure.
And hey, we can repeat the session at any other given point and maybe talk about something in particular, something very particular, like how to set up a virtual GPIO and stuff like that.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Good.
Well, right. Thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it.
Pleasure is all mine. And there you go. Thanks very much again, Liam, and happy to talk to you very soon again. Thank you.
No problem. All right, no problem. Take care then. Bye-bye.